You're in a tournament set at a LAN. Your teammates are physically sitting next to you for the first time, and you hear their actual voices just a little bit through your headset when they say something on comms. The lighting and positioning of the monitor you're playing on are fine, but they're not exactly the way you have them at home, and the screen's a little bit smaller, and the chair's a little different, but you're locked in, and you're already on game 3 of a best-of-5 set. It's 1-1, so the winner of this game doesn't win right away, but they're on match point for the rest of the set. Your team loses a player, so now you're down 1, but it's too late for you to disengage. You shark and catch one player off guard and take them out. Another player tries to trade them back, and you snap as fast as your aim has ever snapped before, stops dead right on them, and you splat them before they can get all their damage down. You're hurt now, but there's another opponent chasing you, hoping to clear it out and at least get back to even numbers. But you can tell their aim isn't set, and they're overextending, and you bait them into a bad position, and you're just able to trade them before they can find their shots. You've taken the game from disadvantage to advantage by yourself, and you know it, and the last player isn't in position to defend. You pop off at hitting the shots you hit, and at seeing the 3 players' names at the bottom of your screen, and the urgency in your voice tells your team it's time to go, and they push the objective over the line to get lead in the last minute of the game. In the last defense of the game, you get another triple off opposing players throwing themselves at the objective, and you're feeling yourself now. You're jumping up and yelling, and your team is too, and everybody's yelling, and it's an amazing feeling. LANs are crazy. We're so good at this game. Oh my god. The set isn't over, though. You sit down, absolutely feeling yourselves, and you A-button through the menus, and you get into the next game, and you're still feeling yourself, but all of a sudden you get called out and splatted early on, and the team goes 3 down. Lucky shot, whatever, go next. You spawn in, and you see a player that seems like they're isolated, and you feel like you can take them, but they end up kiting back, while a teammate you didn't see sharks you. And now your team is staggered, and another goes down to the opposing specials. What happened? Why are you losing all of a sudden? They quickly get a lead that your team will spend 3.5 minutes failing to even get close to, while they play an easy, high-percentage zone defense knowing they don't have to push anymore. The team is a lot more quiet now. Nobody's saying much of anything. You're scrambling to look for answers. We were winning fights before. Why are we losing them now? A lot of the time, you'll hear commentators talk about psychological momentum, especially at LAN events where people are there in person. It's a pretty ubiquitous term that even has scientific studies dedicated to understanding it. It's hard to describe, but if you go to a tournament or two, you'll see it. A team makes it to grand finals and gets to sit and wait while the lower bracket fights it out to find them a challenger. That challenger makes it to grand finals having played close, entertaining sets with the teams they ultimately beat. The players are popping off on camera, and the casters are talking about how they're on fire right now, playing as well as they've ever seen them play. You can see the heightened energy and the callouts on the camera, even though you can't even hear them. And when they get to grands and game 1 starts, they run over the team that has not lost a set all day like a tidal wave. The winner's side team had been sitting and relaxing for an hour, but the challengers had been fighting tooth and nail to get there. They're warmed up, but they've also just accomplished an incredibly unlikely tournament run, and they're just so confident in themselves right now. It's insane to think they got all that way just because of luck. They got there through power of will, and they can make it through this team by power of will as well. It's really common for the team that made the losers run to come out swinging like this, at least early on in the grand finals set. Sometimes the team in grands gets their focus back and can shut them down in the remaining games, but you can see the difference that intense self-confidence had, and you learn to respect it. When people start popping off like that, they're supposed to be doing better. That's supposed to mean they know they've got it in the bag, that they can feel like they're the better team. Why did your Game 4 feel so foggy? Why were the opponents able to pull off such a decisive win? You had the psychological momentum. You went into all of those fights feeling like you were the better player, but then you just got washed. And you know you can beat those players. You did it before. You broke their ankles. You outplayed them in a fight you should have lost. The problem is that you let yourself feel relief. A tournament is incredibly intense. It's a gauntlet of match after match, any one of which could end your run, kick you off the game, make it someone else's turn to be the winner, force you to wait for next time to get another chance. Tournaments are long, too. Even just a single set is a pretty long time to stay focused on something, but you've played a lot more than a single set to be getting into the later stages of the bracket, where the teams you're playing with are more and more closely matched and more difficult to beat. Everyone goes into a tournament with some kind of expectations of how they'll place. It's human nature. We evaluate ourselves and set standards so we know whether we have to change our behavior to perform the way we expect. Some teams go in not expecting much of themselves, and when they're knocked out, they just shrug and go hang out in the audience. But when a team takes the event seriously and wants to make a splash, those expectations can weigh on them, making every match they play a threat to their psyche, a threat that they might not meet the expectations they put on themselves. Man, is it a beautiful feeling to exceed those expectations, and to get to kick back in your chair when the game is done, and have in your hands a success that people will talk about, that people will congratulate you about, that you'll be genuinely proud of, and for it to be an irreversible thing that you've already done, something that can never be taken away from you, something that's not at risk anymore. No more threats to your expectations. The expectations are exceeded. And whatever happens at future events, this one will always be a good one in your memory for it. Confidence, psychological momentum, it can block out the fear of not meeting your expectations if you give it some energy. And that can put you in a mindset where you're able to do your best because you don't have negative emotions turning your brain off. But the thing about confidence is that it's something you feel before you accomplish something. Relief is what you feel after you've accomplished it. Relief is an amazing feeling, like we've said, but relief fails to grapple with further challenges. It's a state of mind where you've decided, we're done now, we can rest. What needs to happen after that disaster of a Game 4, what really should have happened on the results screen of Game 3, is for someone on the team to get everyone to lock back in. They need to start thinking about the video game again, focusing on the game plan, looking for advantages and disadvantages, paying attention to the UI, calling out pushes and special usage, spotting 1v1 matchups and deciding whether they're worth contesting or not. Relief shuts down all that thinking, because the relieved brain has decided that it's done enough, and has decided it doesn't need to be on high alert anymore, and that it can rest. A little bit of rest like that can be good after a close match, because nobody has the energy to maintain high alert forever. But after a really intense pop-off, a really huge celebration, it's not even just that we're distracted or sluggish. We have a physiological response to that. Our fingers are jittery. We're not processing as much of what's happening on screen. There's adrenaline running. And normally for a person, adrenaline is going to improve performance in a number of ways, but part of the fight or flight response is to carry blood away from our extremities to serve our larger muscle groups and certain parts of our brains. Our extremities include our fingers, the things we play video games with. Adrenaline does make certain parts of our brain faster because it's funneling the oxygen to them, but those parts are our lizard brains. Higher order cognitive functions can lose out if we get too hyped up. That's why something like a shooter is more exciting, or something like a slower format of chess tends not to elicit quite the same tenseness or result in the same kinds of pop-offs. A shooter player can make good use of the fight or flight response. You see an enemy player, you whip your aim around to them, you splat them faster than you've ever done before because the stress of the situation has improved your reflexes. It doesn't take those same parts of your brain to look 10 moves ahead and see a forced checkmate, though. When you went into that next game after popping off, you didn't reactivate the parts of your brain responsible for understanding the game plan. When you rolled out, you weren't paying attention to enemy positions enough. You just approached fights with a vague idea that you were just better, that you could outplay them, and you put yourself in situations that were much harder to win. Veteran players learn to channel the positive aspects of our responses to stress, the intensity of focus, the faster reactions, the psychological momentum, but also know that they can't stay completely locked in the whole tournament and will need calm, borderline meditative breaks between games to refocus on the game plan for the next match. They know not to celebrate, not to really let themselves feel accomplished until they actually accomplish their goal. Never pop off too early. Don't let yourself get complacent. Don't let yourself act like you've already beaten them and cross the bridge from confidence to relief until you actually beat them. Even then, if your ambitions go beyond just winning that set, if you're taking a shot at winning the whole tournament, you may not want to let that relief sink in at all until you actually get there. You can get a bit loud. You should definitely gas up your teammate when they did something sick. You can let that confidence build as a team and surf that momentum to higher win rates. But in between games, in between sets, decrescendo. Move down in the dynamic range of your feelings and get back to the quiet, precise, calculated, focused version of yourself where you're not in the process of executing the game plan, so you have the time you need to think about it. And hang on to that focus, that calm, no matter how confident, so you let the smart parts of your brain breathe, and you don't go into the next match foggy and lightheaded. It's easier to say than to do. And if you realize you've let your feelings get the better of you and you're in that relieved state, the fastest way to get yourself out of it is to have questions to get yourself focused back on the game. What was the game plan? What is my role in this comp? Where's my team right now? Where's the enemy team? What's the game state? How close am I to special? How many specials does the enemy team have ready? Think about the game to play the game. Not about who's going to win or lose, or how good that's going to feel, or how worried you are that it's going to feel bad to lose. After game 4, you tell your teammates, we gotta lock in. And you lower your voice, but you keep the intensity up as you remind everyone of what you decided you were going to do for this map mode. You adapt the plan slightly based on the comp the opposing team is running, and you talk about where you're going to roll out. The team is back with you, and they're talking again, and you go into game 5 and you win it. Now you can celebrate. Now you've got the result locked in on the bracket website and you're moving on in the tournament, and you can be a little relieved and take a break. Don't get too relieved though. You've still got a tournament to win.